Today's video covers everything you need to know about the Duolingo English Test. This video is going to be important for anyone who wants to take the test but is unsure of what to expect. First, I'm going to talk about the exam features. Then I'm going to talk about each of the different question types on this test, and of course give you some quick tips and strategies to help you score high. And then at the end, I'm going to run you through some of the important rules you must follow. But very quickly, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm teacher Luke from DETready.com, and we help test takers just like you prepare for your Duolingo English test. We've got courses and tools to help you prepare, just like this practice platform where you can practice all of the questions and check your answers immediately. A lot of test takers use this and they find it very helpful for their preparation. But anyway, back to this video. So what is the Duolingo English Test? Let me talk about just a few of the key features here. So first and foremost, the Duolingo English Test is an English proficiency exam, just like the IELTS or TOEFL, but it is a far more modernized version. So since the Duolingo test is a modern exam, there are a few key features you might not be aware of. You can learn everything in detail about the Duolingo test at the Duolingo test website, but now in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 of the key features you need to know before you take your exam. First up, this is a computer-based test only. You do not need to go to a test center to take this exam. But more than that, this test can be taken at any time and anywhere you want to, as long as you're in a room by yourself. You don't need to book a time slot like on the other exams. You can take this test at any time you want to, which of course makes it super convenient. Next up, it's quite a short test. It only takes 1 hour to complete, compared to the other exams which take between 3 and 4 hours. On top of that, you will get your results within 48 hours, which is fantastic because that means there's less time stressing about your results. Number 3, there's only one section. So unlike the other exams like the TOEFL or IELTS that split their test into 4 sections, reading, listening, speaking and writing, the Duolingo test just has one section. All of the questions that evaluate those skills are in one section, so you don't know which type of question type will come next. On top of that, the time limit you get for each question type is significantly shorter than on the IELTS and TOEFL. A lot of the question types are only around 1 or 3 minutes. And even for the writing questions, which typically are the longest, for the Duolingo test, you only have 5 minutes, which means that you are not expected to produce long answers. Instead, Duolingo evaluates your English level based on a lot of short response answers. So you do get a lot of questions on this test, but your responses are a lot shorter, which from my experience, a lot of test takers do prefer because you're not required to read long texts or write long essays. Number 4, the Duolingo test is an adaptive test, which is a modern way of testing. Adaptive testing basically means that the difficulty of the questions you're given adapt to your level as you go through the exam. For example, if you're answering lots of questions correctly, then the following questions will become more difficult because the test is adapting to your level. And of course, the opposite is true. If you're answering questions incorrectly, the questions will become easier. 5, the scoring system is different. Your scores will be reported on a scale from 10 to 160. Here's a comparison chart of the Duolingo test scores and the IELTS scores. You can find this on the Duolingo test readiness guide. Most universities require you to get a Duolingo score of between 100 and 120, which is basically band 6 and band 7 on IELTS. And once you've completed the test, you will receive an overall score of between 10 and 160, and also a score for each of the sub-scores: literacy, comprehension, conversation, and production. As you can see here, literacy is your ability to read and write, comprehension, read and listen, production, write and speak, conversation, listen and speak. Each of the language skills contribute to 2 different sub-scores. And the score a lot of students struggle with most is the production score, which unsurprisingly is, of course, your speaking and writing. So definitely check out my speaking and writing videos for this Duolingo test. Even though the Duolingo English test is relatively new, there are currently over 4,500 universities and institutions that accept it. And it's growing in popularity every year. Those were some of the key features of this exam. If you want to learn more, head over to the Duolingo test website and download their readiness guide. But now in this video, we will begin by going through each of the different question types on this exam, and I'll share some tips and strategies to help you do well for each of these questions. Let's start with read and complete. For this question type, your job is to read a passage and fill in the blanks. The passages are quite short, normally around 100 words or a bit less. And usually there will be between 8 and 10 words which you have to complete. Most of the passages I've seen have been non-fiction, so factual reporting, but there might be some fiction-based or story-based text in there as well. Let's talk about some quick tips and strategies. It's very important that you read the title and the first and last sentences before you begin typing. The reason being is that the title and the first and last sentences will be complete. There will be no gaps in these sentences. So by reading those first, you'll get an understanding of the context and the topic of the passage. This will help you to activate your vocabulary related to the topic to complete the blanks. My suggestion is that you complete all of the words you know first. So read it through and type out the words you are sure and you are confident you know. At the start, I don't recommend you waste time thinking about the words you are not sure of. Just complete the ones you are confident you know. And once you've completed it once, you read the passage again and try to fill in the words you missed. And you use context clues to help you to complete the gaps of the words you don't know. Context clues could be topic information or grammatical knowledge. Some of the words in these passages will be content words, and others will just be grammar words like who, which, that. So use both the topic information and your grammatical knowledge to complete the gaps. Next up, we have read and select. This is the vocabulary question, and it looks like this on the exam. Your job is to select the real English words out of this list. This list contains real and unreal words. But what is a real word? Well, a real English word is a word with a meaning. So these two words here, heart and dismay, are real words because they have meanings. Whereas these words here on the screen are not real words. They are unreal because they have no meaning attached to them. That's what Duolingo mean by selecting the real words. Some quick tips and strategies. It's very important that you only select the words you are confident are real words. And you should avoid selecting words or guessing words you are not sure of. The reason being is that all of the words in the list, all of the unreal words, could hypothetically be real words because they do follow English spelling rules. But they are not real because there's no meaning attached to them, which means it's impossible just to guess. You have to only select the words you are confident are real words. And to prepare for this question type, you should focus on building your vocabulary. You should be continually learning new vocabulary to improve your English, and that's the best way to do well for this question type. You could also practice on our practice platform on detready.com. This will help you to learn new vocabulary and also help you to get used to this question type, especially the short time limit. Another tip, which is really important, is that you should avoid selecting all of the words on the list like this here. I quite surprisingly get this question a lot from test takers, like, can I select all the words? And the answer is, of course, no, you cannot. Because if you select some of the unreal words in the list, then of course you will lose some points for that. So just focus on selecting the words you are confident are real English words. Next up, we have listen and type, a dictation question type, and it looks like this on the exam. For this question type, your job is to listen and type out exactly what you listen to. You only have 1 minute to do this, and you can listen up to 3 times. Since you only have 60 seconds to do this task, the sentence that you're going to listen to won't be very long. But still, you have to focus on typing exactly what you hear quite quickly because the 60 seconds will go by very fast. Some quick tips. You should type out exactly what you hear. Every single word if possible. But if you're doing it and you miss a couple of words during the listening, just type out as much as you can. The Duolingo test questions are graded on a sliding scale. So the more you can do, the better your score will be. You won't get 0 points if you miss one word. So how to tackle this question type? Well, first you should listen and type out as much as you can Basically, I think all of the key content words. And then for the second and third listening, you want to listen and fill in any gaps in that sentence. And you should use what you have already written in the first listening to guide you. And after you've written, you should use your grammatical knowledge to read the sentence and see if there are any grammatical mistakes. If you can use your grammatical knowledge, then you can fill in any of the gaps that you missed during the listening. Another tip is to actually practice typing quickly. You should begin typing as soon as you listen, just to use all of the seconds available to you. Again, if you need to practice this with the correct time limit, then our website on DET Ready has a tool to help you do that. The next question type is kind of similar. It's called read aloud. So here, rather than listening to a sentence, you have to speak it out loud. And this, of course, tests your pronunciation and overall speaking ability. The time limit for this question type is the shortest on the exam. It's only 20 seconds. So again, the sentence you have to read out won't be that long. I strongly suggest that before you begin reading out loud, you do read the whole sentence silently in your head. Silently is important because you can do that quicker than reading out loud. And since you only have 20 seconds, every single second is important. When you're ready, press record and begin reading out loud. Speak loudly at a natural pace and focus on your pronunciation. And you should know that you can only record your answer once. You can't redo your answer after you've clicked record. Anyway, you only have 20 seconds, so it's really hard to do this more than once anyway. Now let's talk about interactive reading. So interactive reading is a bit different than the other question types we've talked about so far. For each reading passage in interactive reading, you get 5 different question types. On top of that, you do get 2 interactive readings on the test. So you do the whole thing twice. So like I said, there are 5 question types. Let's go through them quickly. The first one looks like this. Here you will read the passage for the first time and you will select the best option for each missing word. There are 5 options per missing word and you select the best one. You should know that you must answer all of the questions here before you can move on to the next question type. The second question type in interactive reading is called complete the passage. The first section of this passage is the same as in the previous question type, so you've already read it. But you are also provided with the second part of the passage at the bottom. And your job is to select the best sentence to go in the middle to complete the passage. The option you select does appear in the text once you've selected it, so you could, if you wanted to, read the whole passage to check that it flows smoothly. Next up, we have highlight the answer. This tests reading for specific information. Basically, you're given a question and you have to find the correct information in the text. Once you've found the correct answer, you simply highlight it. A lot of test takers ask me how much they should highlight. Should they highlight the whole sentence or just a part of it? And the answer depends really. The amount you should highlight really depends on the question. But you should try to answer only what is necessary. So that could be a whole sentence or maybe just 1 or 2 words in a sentence. But just try to focus on highlighting what is necessary. And you should know that you actually get 2 of these questions per reading passage. Moving on to the next one, it's called identifying the idea. Basically, this is a main idea question where you read the passage as a whole and choose what the main idea is. Again, you've got 4 options and 1 correct answer. Last but not least, we have title the passage, where you have to select the best title to fit the passage. Even though the passage is still the same and this is the last question type, I do recommend you read it again and try to select then the best title to match the passage. There are 4 options with just 1 correct answer. So that's a summary of interactive reading. I went through it quite quickly because there's a lot to cover. I have made a whole video covering it, so check that out if you want to learn more. But don't go just yet because now we're going to talk about the newest question type on this exam and it's called interactive listening. The interactive listening section is broken up into 2 parts. First, you have the listening where you participate in an academic conversation, and then at the end, you have to write a summary of what the conversation was about. Let's first look at the listening part. Like I said, for this listening part, you are participating in an academic conversation. The key word is participating. So you are one of the people in the conversation. Your job is to listen to the partner in the conversation, and then you choose the correct response or the best response for the conversation's context. This is in the form of a multiple choice question where there are 4 options and you choose the best answer to fit the context of the conversation. After you've completed all of the questions, you are able to read the whole conversation again. And I highly recommend you do that because the next part of this question type is writing a summary, where you have to summarize the conversation you just had. Now, you only have 75 seconds to write the summary, which obviously is very short, so your answer will probably only be a few sentences long, just a brief summary. When you write the summary, I recommend you use the first person, like I. For example, I had a conversation with my professor about blah, blah, blah. Now, the reason I recommend you do this is because in the conversation, the listening conversation, you were participating, so you were involved in it. So imagine that is actually you when you're writing your summary. I had a conversation with my professor about. I highly recommend that you write as much as you can within the short time limit, because fluency is part of the scoring criteria when it comes to any writing question on the Duolingo test, and Duolingo measures fluency by how much you can speak or write in a limited time. Writing a lot is very important, and the best way for you to write as much as you can is to learn a structure before you take the test. In my video on YouTube covering this question type, I did teach a structure in depth, but very quickly, just for this video, this is the rundown of the structure. The first sentence can be, who did you talk to and what about? Then you can move on to the details. So what were the ideas discussed in the conversation? And lastly, you could think about the outcome. What did you say that you were going to do? This example is kind of long. Like I said, you only have 75 seconds, so don't worry if you can't write this amount. This was just here to give you some ideas of what you possibly could write when you do your summary. Now let's move on to all of the speaking and writing questions. These questions do contribute heavily to your production score, which is a score I know a lot of test takers want to improve. So pay close attention here. Let's start with write about the photo. For this question type, you have 1 minute to describe a photo through writing. Now, of course, 1 minute is not a long time to write about a photo, so your answer isn't going to be very long. You should try to write one full, complete sentence. But of course, if you're able to, writing 2 or 3 sentences will help you to get a higher score. If those sentences are grammatically correct, that is. So let's take a look at some tips. Firstly, you should look at the photo and analyze it carefully. Take a look at the main subject in the photo. It could be a person, a vehicle, an animal. Think about what they are doing. Also, look at the different items and objects in the photo and where they are located and what is near them. All of this information will help you to describe a photo really effectively. My second tip is really important, and that is for you to learn a structure for writing about a photo before you take your exam. Now, this is really important because describing a photo is not something we do very often in real life, and it can be kind of awkward if you haven't prepared. Learning the structure will help you to generate ideas, and it will help you to write more in this short amount of time. I've made several lessons on this here on YouTube, so go and watch that. But very quickly, the structure I teach looks something like this. You start off with a general overview of the photo. Then you go into more details by thinking about these questions. Who is doing what and what is where? Just focusing on those 3 things can really help you to organize your answer better and write a longer answer. If you're interested in studying this in more detail, you should check out my production score program on my website. This program has 3 courses, all of which will help you with your production score on the Duolingo English test. And in this program, there is a full course dedicated to helping you to describe a photo really effectively. I think this is one of the hardest question types on the exam, so I do recommend you taking that program to learn as much as you can about how to describe a photo really well. My next tip is to try to use descriptive language as much as possible. Think about adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, anything that can bring the photo to life. This will also demonstrate that you have a good vocabulary, which will boost your score because lexical sophistication and lexical diversity are on the scoring criteria, as you can see right here. And lastly, you should try to write as much as you can. The minimum requirement is 1 sentence, but you should be trying to write 2, maybe 3 if you can. The next question type is really similar. It's called speak about the photo, and it looks like this on the exam. So this is very similar to write about the photo, but instead you are speaking. In addition to that, you have 90 seconds to do this rather than 60 for write about the photo. And most people are able to speak faster than they can type, so your answer should have a lot more detail in it than in write about the photo. Let's look at some quick tips and strategies. So you actually have 20 seconds to prepare for this question type. So use those 20 seconds wisely and analyze the photo in as much detail as you can. When you analyze the photo, look again for the main subject. What are they doing? What are they wearing? And look for other items or objects in the photo. and look at where they are located or what is near them. You can also be very descriptive in your answer, again using adjectives, adverbs, prepositions of place. But also you can tell a story about the photo as long as it is directly related to what is happening in the photo at that moment. It's not a good idea to talk about what is happening beyond the photo, like what happened before or after. Think about what is happening at that moment the photo was taken. And to boost your score, you want to vary your grammar and vocabulary as much as you can. You have 90 seconds to do this question type, which is quite long for a speaking question, so you can go into a lot of detail and you can use lots of different vocabulary and grammatical structures. And it's important that you try to speak for as long as you can. The minimum requirement is 30 seconds, but I do recommend you get as close to the 90 seconds as possible. So try to describe the photo in as much detail as you possibly can. So that was the first major speaking question on this exam. Now let's move on to the next one, which is called Read Then Speak. For Read Then Speak, your job is to speak about the topic for 90 seconds. You'll be given a prompt card like this, which provides you with a general topic and then 4 questions to answer throughout your speaking response. This type of speaking question is very typical. It's very similar to the IELTS Part 2 on the speaking exam, where you have to speak about a topic for up to 90 seconds. For this question type, you have 20 seconds to prepare. So during those 20 seconds, you should read the prompt very carefully, focusing on the topic and all of the questions, because I think it is a good idea to answer all of the questions you're given. The reason I think it's a good idea to answer all of the questions is simply because it'll give you a lot of ideas of what to talk about, which will increase the length of your answer. So try to answer all of the questions. You should also try to use transition phrases to make your answer smoother. When you want to transition from one question to the next, you can use a phrase like moving on to the next question. Or if you want to go back to a question, you can say looking at the previous question again. Any type of transition phrase will help your answer sound smoother. And I did make a whole video on this, so of course you can check it out in my YouTube videos. Just like with all of the other speaking and writing questions, you want to vary the grammar and vocabulary in your answer. If you take a look at the Duolingo scoring criteria here, you can see that the first 4 points are about your grammar and vocabulary, all to do with the correctness of your grammar and vocab, but also the variety that you use. Remember that this is an English exam, so the language, the English grammar and vocabulary you use is really important for showing off your English and showing Duolingo just how high your level is. And another thing you can do to show off your English is to elaborate on your ideas. So rather than just give it a simple response to the question, always go further and elaborate. You can elaborate by giving examples, sharing reasons why you think so, anything like that to make your answer more detailed. And you want to talk for as long as you can. The minimum requirement is 30 seconds, but I highly recommend you try to speak for the whole 90 seconds here. There is another question that's very similar to Read Then Speak. It's called Listen Then Speak. It looks like this on the exam. This is similar to Read Then Speak, but rather than reading the prompt, you have to listen to it, which actually does make it a lot harder. The way you speak out your answer will be very similar to Read Then Speak. So use transition phrases, use lots of grammar and vocabulary, and elaborate on your ideas. But what's particularly important to this question type is that you're able to listen and understand the prompt. You can listen up to 3 times, and you have 20 seconds to listen in total. After those 20 seconds, or the 3 times you've listened to is up, you can't listen again. So you not only have to listen, you also have to understand and kind of remember what the prompt was talking about when you're giving your speaking answer, which of course is not easy. So it means that it is very important that during the listening, you are able to understand the prompt carefully and speak out an answer that is related to the prompt or the topic. If your answer is not related to the topic, then your exam might not get certified. You might get an email like this saying that your answer was not related to the topic. So it is very important that during the 20 seconds of listening, you take your time and understand the topic. If you have difficulty understanding, at least try to focus on the content words. So what is the topic generally about? Then speak for as much as you can on that point. Now let's take a look at the longest writing question, which is called Read Then Write. For this question, you have 5 minutes to write about the topic. Yes, you have 5 minutes to write your answer. It's not long for a writing question, but bear in mind that this is not the same as the IELTS or TOEFL exam. You're not expected to write an essay in 5 minutes. Just focus on writing one complete and coherent paragraph. You don't have any preparation time to do this, so as soon as the question appears on your screen, the timer starts ticking. So as soon as you see it, read the prompt right away, try to understand and formulate some ideas. Don't take your time, 5 minutes will go by very quickly. There is a minimum requirement, and that is 50 words. You need to make sure you write 50 words during the 5 minutes. If you don't write 50 words, your exam might not get certified. So I think it's very important that you practice this before you take the exam and try to make sure you're able to write 50 words on a topic in 5 minutes. Of course, 50 words is just the minimum requirement. If possible, you should write as much as you can. The more you write, the better, as long as your grammar and vocabulary remain accurate. Luckily, you only get this question type once on the exam, but there are 3 different question prompts that you might get. You might get a recount prompt where you have to write about a personal experience, a describe prompt where you have to discuss a situation, and lastly, you might get an argument prompt where you have to give your opinion and argue why that is a good opinion. I cover all of these prompts in my production school program on my website, and I've made lots of videos for you to check for free here on YouTube. During your preparation, I strongly suggest you learn a structure for writing an academic paragraph. This will make your answer more coherent and allow you to write longer in a more organized way. On top of that, if you learn this well, you'll also use lots of grammatical structures naturally in your paragraph. Just very briefly, an academic paragraph consists of a topic sentence, supporting ideas, plus a concluding sentence. There is nuance to each part, but that's the general overview. It's also vital that you use a variety of sentence structures, some simple, some compound, and some complex structures. Compound or complex structures combine 2 or more ideas into one sentence, which is not easy to do correctly all of the time, especially under a time limit. So being able to do that will help boost your score. Just to give you an example, this is a complex sentence. Even though the air pollution is often very high where I live, I still go out and exercise every day. My last tip is to take your time and proofread at the end. You want to check for spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, and also punctuation errors. Punctuation like capital letters, periods, commas, all of these things do contribute to your score. So leave some time to proofread at the end if you can. The last 2 question types I will combine into one, and it is the writing and speaking samples. These question types are almost the same as read then speak and read then write, but the main difference is that your answers will be sent to the university along with your scorecard, which means that the university or institutions you're applying to will be able to read and view your answers, which of course adds an element of pressure to these questions. They are also graded. Previously, these question types were ungraded, but now they do contribute to your overall score. So it is important to take them seriously as they affect your score, and the universities you're applying to will be able to view your answers. Okay, so those were the question types done. Now let's take a look at some of the important rules you must follow. The Duolingo test is a unique test because you are able to take this exam at any time you want and at any location, as long as you're in a room by yourself, which means there's no proctor present when you're doing the exam. So in order to ensure test security, the Duolingo have a few very strict rules which you must follow. And I want to emphasize that it is your responsibility to follow these rules. If you don't follow these rules, you'll get an email like this saying that your exam was not certified. It is very important that you understand these rules before you take the test. The Duolingo test readiness guide covers them in lots of detail. Let's take a look at that readiness guide right now. When you go to the Duolingo test readiness guide, head over to page 40 and you can see the rules. And these are some of the main ones. Firstly, do not use another person's name or identification to take the test. You must be in a room alone and make sure it is well lit. I think that point goes unnoticed. You need to be in a room that's very bright so that the Duolingo AI can see your eyes, because they monitor if you're cheating or not by your eye movements. Pretty creepy and high-tech, but that's how they do it. They do watch your eyes. So in order for them to see your eyes, you need to be in a very well-lit room. If you're doing the test at nighttime, make sure you have a very bright light so your eyes are visible. Your ears must be visible and uncovered, and you cannot wear any headphones or earphones. This is definitely the most common question I get. The answer is no, you are not allowed to use earphones or headphones. Your ears must be completely uncovered. If your laptop is quiet, get an external speaker. That's okay. but your ears must be uncovered and visible. Keep your camera and microphone enabled for the whole time, and make sure your face is visible throughout the whole test. You cannot use any outside materials, and you are not allowed to use writing utensils or any paper. Basically, you can't have anything with you when you're doing the test. So no notebooks, no pen, no paper, no cell phone, iPad, nothing at all. A lot of students are used to taking notes when doing an exam, but for the Duolingo test, you cannot take any notes at all. Next up, don't use a second monitor. Keep your eyes focused on the screen. That's a big one. Make sure your eyes are focused on the screen for the majority of the test. When you're typing, you are allowed to look down briefly. You should try to keep your eyes focused in this type of region, focused on the webcam or the screen or your keyboard. Don't look away for too long. If you look away for too long, Duolingo think you might be cheating, so you don't do that. Don't use any predictive text method. That's another common question I get. You cannot use Grammarly or any other tools like that to help you to write your answers better. And don't close or go away from the test window for any reason. Another rule that's not covered here, but I think is important, is to do with your speaking and writing answers. You have to answer spontaneously. If you use a memorized answer, you might get an email like this saying that your exam was uncertified. I know a lot of test takers like to prepare with memorized answers, but don't do that for this exam. Make sure your speaking and writing answers are related to the topic and are not memorized. Okay guys, that's it for this video. That was a full comprehensive cover of the Duolingo English test. I hope it was helpful. Now I really think you should focus on studying more specifically, and for that reason I think you should watch this speaking video here, because it will help you to describe a photograph really effectively. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you're still here, put a heart emoji below in the comments to let me know, and I'll see you in this video. Okay, thanks guys. See you.